Welcome to Professor Sky's Spam channel, where I talk about anything that's not new music. Now, I'm under my porch, which means I'm going to do one of my under the porch movie reviews. Basically, whenever I go to the cinema, about half the time I go to the cinema, I do a review of a movie, I share my thoughts. Now, these thoughts aren't quite as developed as my music thoughts normally are. I'm not like a movie reviewer. I mean, I could be. I could probably spend some time with that. You know, it's the same basic mechanism of studying music as it is reading literature or listening, or watching a movie. But I want to talk about Nope by Jordan Peele. His best movie, and it's not even close. This movie is so good. And just as a reminder, we complain so much about how movies are ruined and movies are over, and Marvel is just going to kill us, and all we're going to do is have a Disney monolith, and that's it, and it's going to be nothing but established IPs forever. Well, Jordan Peele is making sure that's not happening. He's making blockbuster movies with original ideas. So, that's my non-spoilery thoughts. I don't really put much stock into non-spoiler reviews, because great art can't be spoiled. What's important about Darth Vader being Luke Skywalker's father is not that point where you go, oh snap, he is. It's in the effect it has on the narrative. So let me talk to you. So I went to see the movie with my wife and with my daughter. And when my daughter got out of the theater, she said, I liked it, but what was it about? And I'm not going to fall for that. I was like, well, it's about a lot of things, but what do you think it's about? And so we had a whole conversation. One thing I really appreciate about this movie, and about all of his movies, but is he's not afraid to be earnest and allegorical. Just super allegorical. This movie is way less on the nose with its allegories than his last two, which is why I think it's so strong. I think it is as much about race as any of his other movies are, even though on the surface they're not. It's so dense, and it's filled with all these different kinds of allegory that it's hard for me to even answer my daughter, So we talked the whole way back, we went to the movie theater, we went and saw it in IMAX, which, by the way, do whatever it takes to see this movie in IMAX. It was filmed in IMAX entirely. Okay? Like, the Batman movies that Nolan did in IMAX, those weren't entirely in IMAX. Those were like partially in IMAX. This whole movie, entirely in IMAX. It is as gorgeous as a movie has ever been. Like, you just want to, it's funny because they had the Avatar trailer beforehand, and I really respect James Cameron, even if I don't always like watching his movies. And the feeling I had seeing, oh, look at these weird blue guys, and they're so beautiful. And then Nope started, and it was just as moving, just as sweeping and amazing and immersive. It's so frustrating because I'm sure there's going to be people who are going to pirate this movie, or people who are going to wait to see it online, and then they go, I don't know. I don't really know what people are saying. I mean, I was checking my phone the whole time and tweeting and, I don't know, check on the baseball scores, but it wasn't that good of a movie. I mean, it's really a movie that you just need to be absolutely in. And so when my daughter was asking me what's it about, I basically told her a lot of things I'm going to be saying to you right now. I think if I had to summarize it all together, it's about media, like all medias, like all human creation. I'd say it's really about how humans exploit. That's it. It's about human exploitation. In this case, it's the exploitation through cinema, but it's how humans exploit and animals exist. That's, I'd say, the big theme here. There is definitely a racial component, because a lot of the time that this movie, which seems to be largely about the relationship between animals and humans, often through dehumanization, non-white people are turned into animals who perform in a way similar to the way that the animals on screen perform. Again, to be very clear, I am not saying they are animalistic. I am saying they are dehumanized. Okay? So it's the dehumanization of humans, of non-white humans, that is at play here. But if we think about this, humans exploit, animals exist. This whole movie is about animals being filmed. And animals expecting to be filmed in a way that can net profit for the humans that are filming them. That's the chimp in the beginning. That's the horses. The entire operation that the family is running is about exploiting horses and making sure horses act how they're supposed to act. And when the chimp misbehaves and when the horses misbehave, which is to say, when the chimp behaves the way a chimp normally behaves, when a horse behaves the way a horse normally behaves, they are either fired, killed, or both. And then finally there's the third animal that is being filmed and exploited, the UFO itself. It's not really the bad guy of the movie, which is made very clear. It's not. It's the human drive to exploit animals and to dehumanize people and to exploit them. It's human exploitation. That's the bad guy. Because this whole theme about especially black actors who are dehumanized and treated like animals and discarded, it's really that exploitation that's at the center of it. This isn't going to be super well organized, so I'm going to be jumping around some thoughts here. Stephen Yeun, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He is so good in this movie, and his character is so interesting. I love the way that he's initially framed as the Asian kid from Kid Sheriff, I think was the name of the fictionalized movie. They create such an effective, imagined childhood of this child actor. And what I love is that the idea that he is called the Asian kid from Kid Sheriff. It's very specific to the 90s when political correctness had started, and when all of a sudden representation started to filter in, but it was the Asian kid. It wasn't that he actually got to be who he really is as a person or really get to be a human fleshed out, but he was the Asian kid. And then it follows up with his story in the fictional sitcom Gordy's House, and why this movie is so great. And I was talking about this, I did a review of the Joey Badass album like 10 minutes ago on my main channel. I did that upstairs. This movie is a lot about trauma. And I find that really fascinating because a lot of the exploitation that we see, like in hip-hop, a lot of it's exploitation of black trauma, right? Like that's the biggest knock against hip-hop music, is that it's sort of taking black trauma, packaging it, exploiting it, and then selling it to guys who look like me so that the people who make the music and who were abused or who suffered the trauma can live, right? They exploit themselves so that they can live. And what that means is that these humans are not really allowed to process their trauma, because if they process their trauma and become real human beings, they're no longer successfully dehumanizing themselves for the mostly white viewer who wants to exploit them and extract their story from them. So when he's telling the story about Gordy's house, about this terrible chimp attack, when a chimp acted the way a chimp acted, right? I was explaining to my daughter, if you ever see a chimp in real life, you should be more scared than if you're swimming and you see a great white shark. Like, they're just... You don't want to be around chimps. They're very dangerous. It's not their fault. It's not a shark's fault, it's a shark. It's your fault, you're swimming. So this whole scene where he describes it by describing the Saturday Night Live sketch. And it's the most powerful scene in the movie for me, because he's describing it and he's laughing at how funny it is, and it just cuts to 1 second of him as a kid, traumatized, covered in blood underneath the table, watching the chimp destroy. That's really the moment where you have the tension of the movie. You have the human reality, which is extracted and destroyed and just chewed up and then spit out into something that can... Oh, sorry, my HD camera's going nuts. It's kind of gauzy back there. Hey, focus on me, camera, not the trees. Okay. Like, he gets... Sorry, is this like an ASMR video? I feel like I'm whispering. And then Jordan Peele. That this whole movie is kind of encapsulated in this one scene where he has to perform, like the Mad Magazine, the Saturday Night Live, has to make a mockery out of this, has to make something funny out of this truly traumatic moment. And in a way, this reminds me a lot of O.J. Simpson. So the character's name is O.J., and I had to explain O.J. to my daughter, right? Like she'd heard of him, but didn't really know the whole story. And it was a long conversation about what O.J. is, what he represents, and the thing I was trying to explain to her is that, like, you know, two people were murdered. He probably murdered them. And it's a vicious, vicious murder. And there were tens of thousands of jokes about it. It was hilarious. The dancing judges, everything. One of my favorite sketches of all time is the O.J. blooper sketch from Mad TV. Looking back at it, it's not funny because people are actually dead. But, you know, like, that was the way that in the 90s we processed this traumatic moment, this fall of a great African-American star. And then we get into this whole other question of, like, why is this character called O.J.? And for that, I'm just going to have to say you need to watch more FD Signifier videos, who I always quote, but he talks a lot about how African-American actors, male actors, are expected to play a certain kind of violence, a certain kind of stoicism. If they don't perform violence, they don't get remunerated by the white viewers. So O.J. Simpson himself, being a football star, being someone who's who's prized for his toughness and his physical abilities and his skill, you know, football players are forms of gladiators. Like, he was able to rise up in society because he was able to play the game, but still the same kind of fierceness and brute force that is celebrated, not just celebrated, but is heavily remunerated at the detriment of more human emotions, right? So it's actually creating a less equitable world where these men feel that in order to have any value, they have to exhibit these kinds of emotions of rage, jealousy, anger, ferocity. So I think that's all tied in there. I think that the chimp, to a certain extent, is sort of a stand-in for... The chimp incident is like a stand-in for the O.J. incident in the 90s. But again, to make that super clear, it's the dehumanizing, and it's the expectations, so that we want these people in our lives, we want these things in our lives, but the second that they do not behave in a way that we see to be acceptable, we must remove them. So, I don't know. I said, the first thing I did was I listened to The Story of O.J. by Jay-Z, because I think that goes very well with this, because I think they're both partially meditations on how is it acceptable to be black in America as a celebrity. You know, it's amazing that the whole thing is based on this idea of the jockey in the Moulay Bridge photo that's considered to be the first movie. The name of the photo is actually called Sally Gardner, which is the name of the horse. Do you want to know the real name of the actual jockey? Yeah, so would I. We don't know the name. That was all made up. That was cut from whole cloth. Because the reality is, we don't even know the name of that person. That is such a non-person. Which is to say, the horse had a name. The rider did not. The person who owns the horse, they're famous. They're in all the stories. They're remembered. The person who took the photo, they're remembered. The horse is remembered, but the jockey is not. Also, just not for nothing, but like, I know that the part of the joke about it being called Nope, and Jordan Peele said this in actual reference to the movie, saying that it's sort of talking about African American audiences watching horror movies, that they often just say nope, 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 like, don't do that. That's just, you know, I understand that may be true, but it's definitely not limited to African American audiences, because when I watch horror movies, my entire life, that's always been how I've behaved. That's always exactly what I've done. I've always just screamed nope. I always just say nope, nope, the entire time I watch a horror movie. You can ask my family. Jordan Peele is generally respected as being a great director at this point. But he's still not getting his flowers, because He gets such good performances. Like, this movie sort of deserves like all the Oscars. Like, I think every actor in this movie is acting at the top level. Daniel Kaluuya, the scene, the scene where he is taking over for his father and he's filming the commercial and he's expected to give the safety announcement. How uncomfortable he is. This is an actor, okay? Actors have to go on auditions. Actors have to be totally outgoing and charismatic. It doesn't matter how you act. That has to be how you are as a person. He does such a great job of somebody who is shy, who is not comfortable in the limelight, who is not capable of performing the kind of performative blackness that the white audience is expecting, which is why his sister comes in and does the whole thing. And my wife was saying that she was even dressed like Fresh Prince from Bel-Air, that she seems like she's like playing this kind of bright, shiny, happy, sassy talking woman that is expected. This dichotomy of these two characters is so strong. There's just one scene, and they both act it so well. It's like a masterclass in just how to show people. You know, Keke Palmer as M, just as a performer, is just wonderful. And just the way that Daniel Kaluuya he tries to say it and how much he can communicate with his face. You know, he's playing a cowboy, basically. And he's able to have that cowboy cool while still having real emotions underneath. Keith David's great. Brandon Pereira is the guy at Fry's. He's quite good. Another weird note. There's a scene where they listen to Sunglasses at Night, the song by Corey Hart, I think I want to say, from the 80s. And they listen to it slowed down. This is weird. My brother, he bought the 45 of Sunglasses at Night. And we used to listen to that on the 33 RPM. We used to listen to Sunglasses at Night slowed down in the 80s when the song was new, when it was on the charts. We didn't do that for any other music. We didn't reverse Chipmunks anything other than that one song. Did Jordan Peele do that too? What is the deal? Why is this happening? What is it about that song that sounds so good when it's slowed down? Another thing, the alien. The alien's perfect because it's an aperture, it's a camera. Right? That's very clear that it's supposed to. We first see it as a projector. It's a projector, and it's a camera, and it's a mouth, and it's a butthole, right? It's for evacuation. Like, that's what its aperture does. That's what its opening does, and so that makes it pretty interesting, right? Because in a way, like, it's capturing people the way that people try to capture the animals. The cinematographer character, I think, is another stand-in for Jordan Peele. I mean, I think all the characters are. You know, anytime you write, produce, and direct a movie, basically every character is you. But I love this cinematographer character because he's not super likable. I actually like that about all the characters. Like, the guy from Fry's is not likable at first, but then you come to see he's an okay guy. Same thing with the cinematographer. Jordan Peele, again, he gets a lot of credit, but let's give him more credit for more specific things. He's able to make characters that are not immediately likable, that you end up liking through their actions, not through their affect. It's great. You know, this cinematographer, you know, with this hand-cranked IMAX camera, which is kind of a nod, you know, like, he's a true artist who has to make one for them and one for him, and ultimately films his own death, knowing that no one will ever see it. He's not making this because it is the greatest thing that will ever be shown. He's making it because it's the greatest thing that will ever be made. That's the difference between an artist and a content creator. I am interested in studying the Western themes in here. I don't quite have a thesis on the Western themes. You know, the music is very Western at times. Obviously, the scene at the end at the corral with the horse. I'm not quite sure where it is, except for maybe the general idea that we need to encourage non-white faces in all areas of cinema for all reasons. Just for any reason and for no reason. If I had any criticisms, I don't like the band shirts that they're wearing at a certain point. Just people are doing this too much. Like, I watch The Boys and it just gets distracting. Like, the dude who likes Billy Joel also likes Neil Young. No. Nobody who likes Billy Joel likes the album Zuma by Neil Young. Those two don't cross. And then like the one black guy and the main character just wears all these like hip hop shirts that are just way too on the nose. It felt a little too much like Jordan Peele's like, look, I like this cool band. Look, I like this cool band. I don't know. And he doesn't quite stick the ending. The thing is, I love his other two movies, but he has third act itis. Like, he has a problem with the third act. Everything sort of clicks, but that's my main problem with the first two movies, is you just kind of go like, yeah, that worked. Now, it doesn't fully work, but it doesn't matter that it doesn't fully work, because the allegories are so well delivered, the acting's so good, the set pieces are so good. How many good set pieces are there in this movie? How many good in Nope? How many times does he set something up and you're just, your breath is taken away by the gorgeousness, by the filming, by the editing? It's just so great. I also read the worst bad review I've ever read. Mick LaSalle from the SF Chronicle. Hearst would be ashamed of you. This is just, I was curious, like, what do people who don't like this movie say? The main thing is never to confuse showing off for telling a story. Yeah, but you see, the thing you don't understand is that, yeah, the story isn't super tight, but that's because this isn't necessarily a movie about a story. It's a movie about sort of spectacle. It's a movie about movies. It's a movie about a family. It's a movie about trying to come to terms with all these things. It's not A, B, C, D. You know, it's because that's art. It says that it's more like Shyamalan than like Tarantino, which I think is just Shyamalan. How do you pronounce his name? Shyamalan, probably. Which is just a cheap shot. And okay. For those who want to feel smart, you can even distract yourself by catching movie references. For example, a sitcom actress whose face was destroyed by the monkey attack bears a distinct resemblance to Norman's mother in Psycho. Dude, go to hell. Like, that is the most garbage point I've ever read. A, it doesn't make sense cinematically. 2, it doesn't even look that much like it. C, you're trying to say that you feel smart because you see somebody who was disfigured in a monkey accident and you think it looks like Norman Bates' embalmed mother because they're both in a wheelchair? You think that's a smart thing to do? You watched this whole movie and said that the problem was that the story wasn't good enough, and you're presumptuous enough to say that if you're smart, you'll think something completely stupid? It is a completely stupid point. God, I'm no movie critic. But if that's what it takes to be a movie critic, it just is terrible. This is why I try to stay positive on all my reviews. Because like if you're wrong when you're positive, at least you're trying to help an artist. But if you're wrong when you're negative, just the talent is there, but the movie is dead on the screen. Anyways, shame on the SF Chronicle. I'm open if you want to hire me. So those are my thoughts on Nope. An absolute delight of a movie. Totally engaging. I watched an interview with him where he said that the movie is about spectacle, and I like how it's both an indictment of spectacle and embracing spectacle, because, you know, that's part of the whole thing. We're all responsible for capturing. It's weird because I don't want to say like just capturing animals, but it's like capturing spirits. Right? Like, that's what cinema does, right? That's what the camera does. It, like, captures animal spirits, human spirits, everything, and then commodifies them and then sells them, which is what the good guys were trying to do in the entire movie. By the way, she never takes the picture. So at the end, we learn that what actually matters is a family connection, not the ability to capture the actions of animals and sell them. The Haywoods have actually gone beyond just being animal trainers for film. Speaking of animals, I got some kind of creepy crawlies up there, some cicadas in the willow. A little spooky. I will say, the praying mantis, was the praying mantis in league with the alien? I don't know. And my hair has not gotten any better from my video earlier today. God, I gotta go see Angelo. Okay, till next time, there's the camera.